Okay, let's talk about the frontal lobe first. So the frontal lobe, remember, extends from the central sulcus. There's a sulcus right here centrally, right? And it's everything anterior to that central sulcus and everything dorsal or superior to the lateral fissure, right? And the frontal lobe is probably the part of the cortex that has elaborated the most dramatically in humans versus other primates, and other primates versus other animals. We have a great deal more frontal lobe than a lot of other organisms. And the frontal lobe is absolutely critical for very complex sort of social decision making. People with frontal lobe dysfunction or frontal lobe damage tend to make poor decisions. They have a lot of difficulty, particularly with social decisions, how to behave in particular social environments, for example. The frontal lobe, it is very important for frontal lobe development in terms of developing some inhibition over inappropriate emotional expression. Like you might want to, slug your boss or something, but based upon feedback from various stimuli, complex social stimuli in a situation, that's not a reasonable option, right? So you inhibit that form of emotional expression. Frontal lobe is also quite critical for any form of kind of movement planning, any kind of movement output. In fact, there's a particular gyrus that is just anterior to the central sulcus, okay? It's just anterior to that central sulcus. It's referred to as the that means before, central gyrus. And along that precentral gyrus is a map, basically, of your body. It's referred to as a homunculus, which means sort of a little human, but it's a very strange looking little human because it has a very exaggerated face and very exaggerated larynx and pharynx, very exaggerated hands and a tiny little torso and tiny little legs, and basically it's a kind of a representation of the body in terms of motor movement output. So if you take an electrode, right, and you place it on the precentral gyrus, let's say on the right side of the brain, well, you'll get a part of the left side of the body to move, right? If you generate, you introduce a little electricity there. And I want you to consider why there would be so much more mapping dedicated to, for example, the face and the hands and the larynx and the pharynx versus other parts of the body like the torso. That's an interesting sort of question that's brought up. Now, frontal lobe is important then for social decision making, for inhibition of inappropriate emotional expression, and certainly also for motor planning and motor execution. Remember that any complex cognitive ability is going to involve, multiple areas of the brain. It's going to be kind of a network. But the motor aspects of a particular cognitive ability, let's say language, is going to be, reliant on, structures and regions that are found in the frontal lobe. So when we're talking about speech or sign, right, we're going to be discussing regions that underlie this process, this aspect of the language ability that'll be found in the frontal lobe.